Hi everyone, I'm Vikas Kumawat. In this Azure Advent video, I'll talk about Azure Firewall and how to use it. Before we start, let me tell you about me. I'm an Azure consultant and Microsoft certified Azure specialist. I've been working on Azure for 5 years now. I started using Azure on classic model, right? If you know what classic model is, but if you don't know, you can ignore that, right? Microsoft Azure offers series of services. Like probably you already aware about those services, but if you don't know, that's fine. These services can help you to achieve zero trust from networking perspective, right? You can see on the screen that okay, there are multiple services in the networking itself to help you to achieve that zero trust, right? You can have the DDoS protection for web application. You can have the Azure application gateway. Azure Firewall, we'll talk about that. Network security groups you might be using already, right? And if you are using PaaS services, right, any Cosmos DB or Azure SQL, you might be using VNet integration as well, right? Now, let's talk about Azure Firewall. Azure Firewall is a managed service and first-party solution. It's fully stateful firewall as a service with a built-in high availability, right? And now if you heard about, there are already many providers and vendors available in an Azure marketplace, right? Vendors like Cisco, Checkpoint, FortiGate, right? Those are virtual appliances, right? So you can use them, but now we have an Azure Firewall, right? From Microsoft, right? One of the most important aspect of Azure Firewall that it is an auto scalable and fully managed service, right? Now, you can have the central governance, right? So you can have use this Azure Firewall in a hub and spoke model, right? Where your Azure Firewall would be your hub, and then you can have multiple VNet virtual network spread across the subscription, and you using VNet peering, then you can managing and routing traffic through the Azure Firewall. As I said, you can use in a hub and spoke model, right? So for on-premises environment, it can work too, right? You can have this a hybrid environment. For centralized logging, it can integrate with the log analytics. Then you can see the data in the Azure monitor, right? Also now it's a first party solution from Microsoft, so you can have the integration with the DevOps. You have the FAQ tags already available in the Azure Firewall. We'll see in the Azure portal, right? And you other services like an Azure backup, you can easily enable that FAQ as well. Now let's talk about the Azure Firewall's key features. Applications rules are for as I said, there's a multiple FAQs already available in a Azure Firewall. Let's say if you have a virtual machine and you want to have backup, but at the same time you would like to block internet access of that virtual machine, so you can enable the Azure backup for that network or subnet or IP of virtual machine, right? And can still block the internet access, outbound access of the internet for that specific virtual machine. There are service tags available in the firewall as well for other Windows updates, right? You don't want to block Windows update while you are blocking the internet for that machine. You can have netting for the both side, right? You can do source netting and you can do the destination netting as well. Threat intelligence, again, if you would like to enable threat intelligence, you can do that. By default it's in alert mode, and the IPs are sourced from the Microsoft, right, itself. Microsoft had got a huge list of IP addresses that Microsoft thinks these are the malicious IP addresses, so you can enable that threat intelligence as well. For monitoring, you can store data into the log analytics storage account, and you can have any SIM tool as well to set up an alerting, or you might want to use for the ticketing purpose as well. Talk about the pricing, how the pricing works of Azure Firewall. So there's two types of pricing for the Azure Firewall. First is the fixed pricing, so you'll pay $1.5 per hour per firewall instance, right? And then you pay for per GB process fee as well. Now let's jump into the Azure portal and see this in action. Okay, folks, now I'm in the Azure portal, and if you see at the screen, I have already deployed some of the resources that includes the Azure Firewall as well to save some time. Before we jump into the configuration and see how the Azure Firewall really works in the real world, let me show you something. So if you remember in the previous section, I talked about the NVAs, right? Cisco and Checkpoint. So if you want to look at it, if you go to the marketplace and look for Cisco, then you can see there's a bunch of solution already there in the Azure marketplace from the Cisco. Right? These are the NVAs, and it's been there for a very quite a long time, right? And now we have the Azure Firewall as well. So now let's look at the what I have in the my Azure Firewall demo. So if you see, there's an Azure Firewall resource, and there's a virtual network, and there's a route table, and there's a VM as well. Right? We'll talk about this, and we'll see the configuration as well. But let me show you the deployment experience of Azure Firewall first. Right? So now if you go to the marketplace and if you look for firewall, there's a firewall. So if you click on that, hit create, and the deployment experience is very similar to any other resource in Azure. Only there's a few when you deploy an Azure Firewall, you need to pass on the few parameters, right? The resource group name, the subscription in which you are deploying it, and there's a name of the firewall, region, and if there's an availability zone available in that region, then you can select the availability zones as well. Select the virtual network, right, in which you want to deploy, and the subnet, right? Make sure the subnet name is Azure Firewall subnet, right? It has to be that same, and you can add in private IP, public IP if you have any existing one. If you don't, then create a new one. Right? So that's the deployment experience of Azure Firewall. Now let's talk about the environment and demo I have. So in the demo I have the VM and the route table. So the route table, what it's doing, it's routing every traffic from the virtual network to the firewall. So to see that, let's go to the route table, and if you go to the subnet section, you see I have associated the VM subnet to the route table, and in the routes configuration, right, what I'm doing, I'm routing everything from the virtual network to the my Azure Firewall. This is the private IP of Azure Firewall, right? So every traffic is going through the Azure Firewall. Let's go to the Azure Firewall. So in the overview, you can see there's a name of the virtual network and the subnet, right? And the private IP of your Azure Firewall. And there's a public IP as well. Now, at Microsoft recently added a capability where you can have multiple public IPs to the Azure Firewall. And if you want to have multiple for application, for multiple application, then you can do that as well. Now, threat intelligence we already talked about, right? It's by default it's on the alert only mode, but if you want to go for the alert and deny, you can do that. So now let's talk about the rules. In the rules section, you can see there's a NAT rule, there's a network rule, then there's an application rule. I have created server rule to save some time again, right? But I want to start with the NAT rule because there's a specific order here. The rules are processed in a specific order. The lower the number, the higher the priority, just like the network security groups, right? And to understand the rule processing logic, you can go here and you can read this document, right, of the Azure Firewall. Now, to take a look at the Azure Firewall rule I already created, if you can see, it is I have created an external RDP rule. What it does, anything coming from any IP address on this IP address, which is the public IP address of Azure Firewall, on this specific port will get routed to this IP address. This is the IP address of my virtual machine, which I already have in the same virtual network, and it will translate it into the 3389. So what I'm doing, I'm translating my RDP from 33890 to 3389. To see this in action, let's open this remote desktop and let's hit the username and password of the virtual machine. Now if you see, I am into the virtual machine now. Right. Now let's talk about the application rules first. So the application rules allows you to add the FAQDNs. Also, you can allow and add the FAQDN tags as well, right? So FAQDN tags are the Microsoft already created a bunch of tags for you to make your life easier. Right? So if you would like to allow Windows update on a virtual machine, but you'd like to block some of the sites and websites, you can do here. So you can allow the Windows update. So your Windows update still would work, but there will be no access to the other websites. In the target FQDN, you can add those FQDN and websites here with the protocol and the source IP. So the source IP could be like the IP address of your subnet, IP address of your virtual network, right, or IP address of the peered VNet as well, or peered subnet as well. So now let's go back to the network interface of virtual machine. So in order to for target FAQDN to work, right, what we need to have a DNS server. Since there's a no domain or Active Directory environment here, right, what I did, I added a public DNS, which is by CenturyLink. You can add that too, right, without any worry. So what I did, I added the to public DNS entries here, right, so my machine can talk to the internet. In the firewall, what I did, I and the network rule, what I did, I added those two again DNS server entries here. So my subnet thing coming from this subnet can talk to these IP address over port 53, which is the IP address for the DNS server. So if you go to the application rules again, you can see here I'm allowing the Azure backup, right? I'm allowing some of the sites as well. Along rest of the things are blocked. Let's see if that's working or not. So now if you go to the virtual machine again, and if you open up the Internet Explorer, let's try github.com, right? Because that's not there in our firewall rules. So if you see, it's blocked because of there's a no rule. Now let's open up the google.com. It's working. So now I think you kind of understood how things are working. If you have an Active Directory environment, then you would add the IP address of your DNS server here, or if you have any other DNS server, you can add that too. And make sure you are allowing you are setting the rules properly, right? Because you don't want to block, if there's any Azure backup already configured for your virtual machine, you don't want to block those Azure backups, right? So make sure you allow those FAQDN tags, and that should be fine. We talked about the rules, we talked about threat intelligence, we talked about the public IP. Now let's talk about the diagnostics. So we talked about the monitoring, centralized monitoring for Azure Firewall. From the diagnostic settings, you can enable that centralized logging, so you can see all the logs in the Azure monitor. So here you can send your logs to the log analytics, you can send it to event hub, you can archive this to a storage account, so you'll be able to query your logs using the log analytics. So that's it from the Azure Firewall. I would highly recommend go and try in your environment, do some POCs, demos for you to understand. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.